Welcome to the free webinar series, Take the Chance to Change Your Work. My name is Eva, I'm a psychologist and coach at CNU's Multilingual Therapy Institute, and I invite you to join this free online program that is designed to help you navigate the transitions you might need right now to make your work more meaningful. Welcome everybody today, Labor Day 2020, really special Labor Day. I would say we're probably all at our homes or something similar to being at home. And yeah, I really enjoy the fact that we can spend this time together. Hope you can see me well. That's a little bit dark. So question, what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about change, and we're going to talk about options to actually make changes to your work. And that can mean very many different things. On purpose, the webinar today is designed to be very broad, because probably the situation right now, in case you need to make a change, can be very, very disparate depending on your current situation. So given that this is the case, I just wanted to make it very clear from the beginning what type of changes we might be thinking about. So first of all, we might be thinking of a very personal change. What's in that category? Something where you feel that you have not been at your best at work, where you notice that you didn't have the energy, that your engagement is not really what you want it to be, and you know that it has to do with how you show up at work. And that can mean many things, and can mean that you work too much, or you don't work on the right things, or you're not in the right projects, or you're just not making good use of your strengths. So this is a very personal endeavor here. And the good news is that if this is something personal, there might be very many small changes that might be very helpful for you to actually get this going now that I'm just assuming we're all still in lockdown, knowing that even in countries who are already making it a little bit less drastic than here in Spain, but still, we're just thinking about this as of today. So the other type of change that you might be thinking about is more of a community-based change. So what am I referring to here? I'm referring on the impact of your work on your family, on your team, your company, if you work for a company or you have a company, and even on the world. So bigger picture thinking, because I've also noticed that when we step back, when we get out of that autopilot of habitual work, right? Every day we get up, we get dressed, we get to work, we get going, and we don't really stop to think because we're in autopilot, right? Because our work requires us to be on the go all the time. So if that's the case, we often might get stuck into ways of working that are not really ideal, and the things we don't even see that. I clearly remember, and I haven't even presented myself. I think many of you, you know me, but just in case, my name is Eva. I used to work in business and international marketing, and 10 years ago, I made the change. I started working as a psychologist and a coach, and I'm actually pretty surprised because today I was like, so how long is it ago? And 10 years. So for 10 years now, I've been working in the field that I chose for myself. So I clearly remember in my first year of working for a big multinational company, they told me, Eva, you're our new hire. You are so important. I had a lovely team. I had a lovely boss. She wasn't the reason I left. And I felt like, what, why am I special for you? And she said, well, because you are the only person on our team who can still see the way we work with new eyes. And that's worth so many things. Because they were a team, they had been working together for 3 years, 4 years, and they didn't see the problems anymore. They had gotten used to so many problems, and that has stuck to me since then. And that was maybe 2004, I think it was, when she said that to me. And it was really, really, really impactful. And it made me realize, even back then, that really when we get into the autopilot of work, there's many small things and even big things that we get used to, even though we shouldn't be getting used to it. We should be bugged by it. We should think, oh, this is not good. And this is not good might mean it's not good for your team because you don't have a good communication, or you don't spend enough time together. You don't have time to bond, whatever that is, whatever that is you need to bond. Or it's not good for your company, where you realize you're wasting time, there's processes that are not in place, whatever that is. Or, and that's maybe even the biggest picture, that whatever you're doing as a company, it's not healthy for the world. And even though this is a webinar where I'm a psychologist, I'm not a business strategist, I am not a environmentalist in the sense of like, I don't know about environmental strategy, that's what I wanted to say. So I can't go to that level, but maybe you can. Maybe you can do that in your job. Maybe that is something that can come out of this crisis, something good that can come from this, because we're talking sustainability and we're talking responsibility. We're really asking ourselves, are we owning our responsibilities the way we want to? Right? And maybe this is the time that we're realizing it. So why do we realize it now? And this is so beautiful, and I've seen it over the past 7 weeks that we've been in lockdown, that the types of thinking, the thoughts that came up in my clients were much more about, wow, why do I not feel like going back to normal? When everybody's talking about, I want to go back to normal, why do I not feel like that? And they started to realize that there were certain things about work that really bugged them. And they hadn't even noticed how much it bugged them. So huge opportunity right now to start to make small, middle, or even bigger shifts in our world. And that's what this webinar series is for. So without further ado, we're going to start with paralysis. So this will be kind of the most negative of our webinar series. Overcoming paralysis, because it's the first step. We need to put our own masks on first. And I've allowed myself to take out oxygen mask, but I think nowadays, talking about masks, we're thinking about the mask that we put on when we leave the house. So putting your own mask first is something that we're going to do, and we look at in 3 steps, very defined steps that you can do and you can take. Why do we need to take them? We're going to get there in a moment. First of all, I wanted to share a quote that I think is beautiful. It's Winston Churchill, and he said, "Courage is what we need to stand tall and speak up. And courage is also what we need to sit down and listen." So in this case, I'm not referring to that it takes courage for you to sit down right now and listen to me. I'm referring to that it really takes courage to listen to ourselves, to the signs that our body, our system, our minds are sending, also listening to the environment, and then making choices, courageous choices that might lead you to the limits of your comfort zone or even a little bit out of there, but that will make your next phase in life so much better. And this is the chances that we get when we're going through some crisis. So I'm just being aware that I'm receiving some chat here. So good question here. Professional changes are also only in the category of community changes. No, thank you so much for bringing that up. When we're talking about things that we need to start change, it can also be how I feel about my work, how I think about my work, how I use my strengths when I'm at work, or even, and I forgot to say that, thank you very much for bringing that up, sometimes our work is a part of our life, and it starts to spread, right? It spreads in our home life, it spreads in our what we do when we are supposedly outside of work, and suddenly we can't enjoy other areas, other aspects of our life because work-related thoughts, work-related worries creep in. So in this case, the change that we might need to do is a change that has to do with personal space, with making better boundaries between the time we work and the time we live our private life and when we recover from work. And even beyond that, there might be problems in how you use your energy at work. So a very personal topic, meaning that you get there, you are full of energy, you still have a lot of energy at 4, you don't stop, but at the end of the day, you're completely drained because it happened that you forgot to take some breaks, and then work drains you. Or you're always using the same strength, and that is a drain. So the change that you need to make in that case is a very personal change. Yeah, how I organize my day, what are my priorities, how do I engage with that work? Do I engage with my work with strength number A? We're going to talk about strength a lot in the upcoming webinar, so don't worry about that. And that will lead us to conserve some energy. And this energy piece is something that we're going to talk about today, because we need to start with taking care of our own energy, of our own well-being first, before we can make a meaningful contribution to our family, to our team, to our world, to our community, to our company. So having said that, and seeing this wonderful quote from Winston Churchill, the question here is, this wonderful Chinese character means crisis. You might have noticed, you might have known this before. I think it's really beautiful. I've done different videos on it. I always talk about it. And it sounds so great, right? Opportunity and threat. You know, the two signs. One is opportunity, the other one is threat. Meaning that in every crisis, yes, it is a threat, but it's also an opportunity. And that's true for personal crises, professional crises, global crises. And the thing is that, of course, which is the one that we want? We want the opportunity. We want to turn this into an opportunity. So just quick question to you, please type into chat, what are some opportunities that you think might come from this? And just think of this coronavirus crisis as a potential catalyst for positive change. But what type of change? What could that mean? Please type that into chat. Give me some ideas here. So this is kind of where I want us to also be interactive. I'm going to read it out loud. You can find the chat in the bar that's down there. Please let me know what you think could be positive changes. Learn to be more digital. Yes, I think that's brilliant. We need it, not just because it's more productive or for all the different reasons why it's good. Also because if we're more digital, maybe we can move around less. We can use our cars less. We can be on the road less. Maybe we can work from home a little bit more because we might like it. Allows employees to work from home. Yes, I would love to see that happen for exactly the same reasons. You know, we are maybe more productive when I'm home. Certainly true for me. I really get those bubbles of productivity and I always make sure that I work from home on Mondays. I'm happy that I can organize my work independently, and that's really a big win for my weekly productivity. So spend quality time with ourselves, of course. You know, working at an office is not ideal for everybody. Some people love the buzz, some people love being around people. For others, it's more of a drain. I've spent 1 year of my work life in a huge, big office, and I was working lots of hours. And I really know that back then I was craving time on my own. And actually, there was this wonderful building in Geneva. And sometimes I just took my lunch in a little lunch box and I went up to the roof. We had a lovely roof terrace. And I just sat there on my own. I felt a bit weird, like a little weirdo, not connecting to other people. But it was so necessary because it was just drained by so many people around me every day. We were 2,000 people in that building. So spending quality time with ourselves can happen more, you know, and that is both true for now the lockdown when we're really at home, and also the great appreciation of everyday things. It's a beautiful, beautiful opportunity that we have. And that's something that, if you're curious, you know, the first weeks after the lockdown here in Spain, we shifted all our therapy work, all our coaching work online. And then we saw that in the first weeks, our clients, they really didn't need that much help because many, many people were just directly pushed into gratitude, which is what Timmy is saying here. Gratitude for the small things, for their families being safe, even if someone had been affected, saying like, but they're doing well, it could be so much worse, right? The gratitude was actually very present in the beginning. And over time, there's other emotions that were becoming more and more present, because gratitude, even if it's a very, very positive emotion, the thing is that we need variation. So by now, after 7 weeks or whatever the country that you're in, it really depends what you are appreciating. So right now here in Spain, what we're going to appreciate a lot is tomorrow, we're going to go out and do some sports, right? So the thing is that we can't keep appreciating the same things for 7 weeks. It loses its power. So that's when, you know, positive emotions come down. That's when other emotions become more present. So we're going to look at that in a moment. Just wanted to share what Bernard's saying here. Reassess what is actually important. That's my word. You know, that's exactly a beautiful segue into our next piece here, because that's what I want you to do. I want you to reassess what's really important. And Teddy, absolutely agree, also educating yourself, a new field, which maybe is what you're doing, being part of this webinar series. So we've made it very clear we all want to leverage these beautiful opportunities that you're mentioning here. Problem is, your mind has a very different opinion about that, because your mind, just in case, assumes that this is a threat, and that's what it reacts to. Right? Even though, yes, we want to believe in opportunity, the mind doesn't care. The mind just goes, this is a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of new things. I don't know about this. I've never been here. I don't know what's going to happen. So this is really how the brain, the limbic system in this case, reacts, and it causes something that probably all of you know. That's the fight, flight, or freeze response. This is a fear reaction. It's a reaction where we perceive that something's wrong, something in the environment is not right, or it's not how we used to see it, how we used to experience it, and it starts to trigger us. And then really depending on the intensity of the circumstances that are triggering us, the intensity of the change in our own situation, we start to feel different things. So the first thing that we might be experiencing is to freeze. So what is that? I wanted to really go deeper here. So freezing is you can't really think clearly. So the blue thing here are our thoughts. The black thing is what we are likely to do. And the red line that you're going to see are the emotions that most likely are going to be present. So on the thinking space, when you're in freeze, you can't even think. You're blanking. You're completely in this numb state of mind where it's tough to even think a clear thought. On a behavioral level, that's when we have paralysis. And today we wanted to talk about paralysis, and this is our main topic for today. When we're paralyzed, what we often look at is for distraction, right? Because if I can't think clearly, it's really uncomfortable to be in that space. We don't like it. It feels really out of control. So what we normally do is we distract, right? We just go online, we spend loads of time on LinkedIn or on Instagram or on Netflix, whatever that is, or we just watch the news. And you might have realized that you have been in paralysis, particularly in the first days of this happening and hitting your country. That's when we were just like this, like eyes wide open, not really much of an emotion on your face, and just blank, staring onto the screen of whatever screen you were looking at. That's paralysis. And that's the stage where we often go back to when we don't really know what to do, when it's too overwhelming, when we can't really think of anything that we can do about it. That's when we go back into freeze. So what I'm saying here is like, we're going to shift between these three states that we're going to talk about. Let's look at the flight mode. Flight, not in the sense of flying, but of running away, right? Flight, go away, this is dangerous. So what is this about? On a thought level, that's the typical rumination thoughts. What if I lose my job? What if I can't go back to my job? What if the industry comes down? What if the country comes down? What if? Or another type of rumination, maybe I could have, should have, ought have done something different. Maybe I should have been prepared. Maybe I should have left my job. Maybe I should have, so these are all thoughts that go in circle. They don't really help us to take action. They don't really help us to get anywhere. They're just all the time in our head. So this overthinking, so on a behavioral level, the overthinking, you might think that thinking is that a behavior. Yes, we as psychologists, we consider it a behavior because it's something that we do. On a behavioral level, also what is most often observed here is avoidance. Right? Avoidance, maybe I'm avoiding to speak to my boss, maybe I'm avoiding to speak to, ask questions because I'm afraid to hear the answer. I don't really want to know what they're going to answer if I ask, what's going to happen to us. Right? So avoidance can even leap onto the work task. And if we're still working, we might notice that we're avoiding it because whenever I go and sit down and want to work, all these what if scenarios come into my head. So again, very uncomfortable state, and it goes along with emotions of anxiety, which also can feel like I'm very agitated, but agitating in the nervous sense, also on an emotional feeling level. And then if we happen to be in fight mode, and you might have noticed it comes, sometimes it comes a wave like that. Fight mode is all about thinking, I'm not going to let I will show you that I can. It's kind of, we don't want to accept what's going on. We want to fight back, and we want to put boundaries, and we want to show everybody that we can, and we're going to stand up and fight for what we think is correct. So this sounds like a very good state, and it is to a certain extent, but often in a situation when I'm thinking of someone who is working from home or not working from home, not anymore working from home, there might be a real sense of hyperactivity, and not the hyperactivity sense like being productive, but more the angry type of hyperactivity or venting happening. You're very on, very intense. And there's a sense of anger and vengefulness behind that. And maybe you start to read a lot the news and starting to vent about what the politicians are doing wrong, or what they should be doing, or what your company is doing wrong, what they should be doing. And maybe without even wanting to, you're creating a very negative space around you. And you're not being a positive energizer, you're a negative energizer. And sometimes we need to vent, although the data on that is not really clear. It looked a couple of years ago that it was somehow helpful, but really nowadays we see that when we vent, we just get used to, whenever I feel negative, I will dump my anger onto someone else. And that's not really helpful, especially if we work on a team, right? That can lead to frustrations, it can lead to even bad news spreading and making things even worse. So all these three states, what I want to say with this is they're very, very natural. That's what your mind does, that's what your brain does, and that's actually what the brains of all human beings do. You know, they might be more or less conscious of it, but it happens to all of us. And the thing is that we have three different ways of dealing with this. And when we're in freeze mode, the first thing we need to do is we need to put out on our own mask on first. So what we're going to focus on today. If we're in flight mode, we can start to manage and say, okay, what's my responsibility here? What can I own? What's something that I can start to take into my hands and reduce that sense of uncertainty and reduce that sense of the lack of autonomy and that lack of fairness? What can I do? You know, by taking action, we feel that our feet are slowly coming back onto some more secure ground. And whatever that is, right? That can be you start to look for jobs, it can be you start to figure out what you need to do differently in your team, at your work, whatever it is. Or you just say, okay, even though I can't go to work, I can go running, or I can eat healthily, or, you know, small things. And from the fight mode, the really interesting thing is that, okay, it's great sometimes to have all that energy, that anger, or the recognition that things are not fair that it brings to us, but we need to choose the right battle. Very important. So this is some areas that we're going to cover in the subsequent webinars, but today we're really going to focus on number one, the freeze bit. And here with the freezing, the super important thing, and I want you to remember that, and if you're taking notes, please write that down. It doesn't really matter if you feel paralyzed at times, because that's normal, that's human, and we just sometimes reach our limit. We need to step back. But it does matter if you stay paralyzed at all times. Right? So this is what we need to prevent from happening. We cannot stay paralyzed at all times. The whole time being paralysis, that's when we really start to become victims of our circumstances, because we're not doing anything. And then it really depends on luck, where the stream, where the current is taking us. And if that's a good place or a bad place, we don't really know, because we're not doing anything to take hold of the steering wheel of our car, of our ship, whatever metaphor you want to use. So, great question here. Is it possible to go through all of those modes in circle? Yes. Good question. The answer is yes, we can. And that depends maybe on what's the news that hit me today, what's the conversation that I had today, do I feel today that it's more possible to do something? Then I might feel that I'm shifting out of that anxious mode into action. Maybe suddenly I heard something that really makes me angry, so I get into this fight mode, so I'm enough of this weird changing news, whatever it is. Or you heard something that seems too much to take and you get paralyzed. So again, if that cycle goes on, so first of all, what I want to invite you here is to start to observe it and understand it, so that the next time one of those three elements comes around, you at least know what it is and you know what you can do. So let's say we are all in a situation that sometimes we shift into a paralysis. We need to remember that the important thing is, like, for how long? How long do I stay here? So step number one, and this is where we want to go really dive in right into things that you can do. And these are the typical things that I would be doing with a client who comes in and wants to do something about their current work situation. First thing that we do is we analyze the status quo, the current life situation. And very often when someone comes in is really burnt out and really feels all over the place, it's because you've been in fight, flight, freeze for a very long time and your brain is exhausted. first it's the brain, so you get the sense of I'm tired, but sometimes it even is the body. So this whole thing about this fight, flight, freeze, it's a stress response. And if we stay in stress response for too long, it gets into our adrenal glands, and on a physical level, we can be completely drained. So the first thing, really first thing we need to do is we need to hit the stop button and find a space where we can stop and think and reflect. And only then we start to act. Because sometimes I see people, they're like, okay, I'm in the situation and I've been doing this and this and this and this. And we need to stop first, because maybe action, this running around like a chicken without a head, is actually just draining us more, because there is no real intention, or not a well-crafted system behind. You know, there is no strategy. It's just a panicky, I need to do something mode. So the first thing is we need to stop. And actually, congratulations to all of you, because you already did it, right? You did recognize, okay, well, I do need to take some time to think about my work. And here you are, right? Here you are on Labor Day. You took this time and you're here. And that's wonderful, because that's exactly what we need to do. We need to actually schedule it in. So I want you to take your scheduling device, if you're using a notebook, if you're using Google Calendar, an online calendar on your phone, whatever that is, I need you to make a choice and identify a time and space that is recurring over the next couple of weeks and maybe even months, where you stop and you just take a space and a time for yourself to connect and listen to what's going on inside of you and around you, and check in if you're close to paralysis. So the thing is, if you're already in paralysis, your body has forced you to make that choice. It has forced you to say, okay, if you're not going to stop, I'm going to stop you. So after the overwhelm comes the breakdown. So if you notice that you've been numb a lot in the lately, that you've been just in this kind of zoomed out, blank state, it's because you need more time and time and space to think. So this is step number one. So what I do with my clients, we take an agenda, we take a calendar, and we schedule it in, and then we're going to use that space. So maybe you can commit to being with us here for the next 3 Fridays. We have 3 more. It will be at 5, sorry, not 5, at 3, at 3 Central European Summertime, and we're going to keep doing this. So this will be a first commitment that you can do. If you can't do the Fridays, you can listen to the recording. We're probably going to put it on the YouTube channel. So that would already be something that you can do. Maybe you're already doing some coaching. Maybe you have a therapy space that you go to. Maybe you have a mentor, whatever that is. That's already the first step. The thing is, can you see how this is directly opposed to what the freeze state is telling us? Because freeze is, I don't want to think about it. This is too much. I want to distract. I'm like, no. So we're doing the opposite. We're saying, okay, I hear you, mind, but you know, I don't agree. I don't think that avoiding this is going to be any better. So this is the first. Step number 2 is all about, I'm trying to get some light here. Step number 2 is all about stopping the drain. So this sounds easy, but sometimes that requires some pretty deep analysis of what exactly is the drain. So what I'm saying here is, if you're in paralysis, there's something going on that has put you in a state of complete overload, and as soon as possible that needs to stop, because what we're playing around with here is burnout, and you don't want to go into burnout. Burnout can happen when we're afraid. Burnout can happen if we've been overthinking too much, or if we just had too much work to do, which is what's happening. You know, those people, those of you who might have noticed that you stopped working at the office, you came home, you started setting up your home office, and suddenly you started to notice, I'm working all the time. And actually there was just some data released by a company who provides these personal networks, you know, these little sticks that you put in your computer, and it creates a Wi-Fi, and then you connect to your work environment at the office. And they could obviously measure very well how much hours people work. And here in Spain, people on average have added 2 more work hours to their habitual days. That's a lot. Think of the percentage that is. And in other countries, in the US, it's even 3 hours. So please, let's be careful. The thing is, I noticed that, you know, time is very weird to measure when we're at home. We can't really grasp it. You know, how much time has passed? I don't know. And suddenly the day is over. And then we had also the time change, so to summertime, which didn't help. And suddenly we're working too much. Also, what I've heard people say in the last weeks is this, like, I'm so tired. Everybody's talking about, oh, having so much time on your head. Like, I'm opposite. I'm drained. So what I want you to do for yourself, what I invite you to do is, I want you to identify what are the sources of the drain and really be very specific. And if you don't know, then please start making a little schedule. There can be something very visible. You can just print a little schedule, and then you take some colors, and then, or you do some smileys. And the happy smiley says, I am feeling good, I have loads of energy. The smiley is for like, nah, not too much. And the sad smiley is like, I'm so drained. You can also use green, yellow, red, whatever you need. And then you ask yourself, so when I feel the drain, what's the reason for this drain? It can be different options. Is it a type of task that I'm doing? Is it the fact that I've been overthinking? Is it the fact that I've been compulsively looking up new jobs on LinkedIn because I feel so trapped, and I feel worse and worse because I'm actually not doing what I really should be supposed to be doing? Or because you've been trying to do a gazillion things on the same day because you didn't really think about priorities. So that's the idea. You look at yourself, you observe your baseline, you observe your energy levels, and then you make some calls. The calls in the sense of you make a call, you make a judgment call and say, okay, I want to reclaim my autonomy. What is that? It's a super important thing that actually our brain needs to come down from this uncertainty roller coaster that it's on. Autonomy is one of the 5 elements of a very, very interesting model coined by David Rock, and it's about primary threats. So actually, when we lose autonomy, our brain reacts as if it was a survival threat. So we don't like that. The good thing is, now that we're at home, we actually do have more autonomy. We do have more autonomy to decide how we spend our time and what are the tasks, or what are the things we dedicate our focus and attention on. So even if you're not working, you can be saying, okay, I haven't chosen to not be working, but I can choose to do an online course. I can choose to read this book about this topic that I'm really interested in. I can choose to spend more time with my kids, or spend more time with my friends, or write a book, whatever that is. Start your blog. That's autonomy. And that's good for your brain, because your brain notices, oh, I'm making choices. This is great. It seems like something's in my hand. And when something's in my hand, my whole level of tension goes down. So if you're on the other end of the spectrum, where it's just too much things going on, here you have the chance to say, okay, the next time someone comes around offering an additional task, like, imagine, you can maybe see me, little tasks walking around, and people go like, you want that task here? You want to own that? And you can go, thank you, I actually think I can't right now. I'm already full. My schedule is already full. I need to prioritize different things. This is where assertiveness becomes very, very interesting. And I can clearly remember often with senior executives who were very successful in building teams, they often, at the end of that process, they had an issue because they had been so available to their teams that actually their team members, they just came in and didn't even knock on the doors if they had offices, or they just came around and they had interruptions the whole time. So now we're not at the office, but we do have phones, and we do have chats, and we do have all types of communicational devices that might make it really tough to maintain some space for clear thinking, or for focused attention. So, question is here, does the stop draining only apply to the freeze mode? No, it doesn't. So what I'm presenting it now because freeze is kind of the worst of the 3 modes, right? It's the sign that I'm way more overwhelmed. So let me explain this in an animal comparison. A mouse freezes when the cat is already so close that I can't run away anymore, because if I run away, the cat sees me and will catch me. So then I freeze, it plays dead. And so that's when the threat is really in our face. So the thing is, when we're in freeze mode, this is kind of what we need to do first. it might be necessary that if we're in the in fight or flight mode, we also need to stop drains, but it's not as vital. It is vital though when we're in freeze. And also, if this whole thing, it's going to be like a gradual thing, you know. When you're in freeze, you need to stop the drain and start to make small changes, because the thing is, you need to take care of yourself. Don't forget that. We want to put the oxygen mask on first, the mask on first, whatever mask it is, self-care first. And in stopping the drain, sometimes what we realize is I'm not stopping, I'm not eating, I'm not drinking, not all these things. We're just sucked into our work. Or it's interrupted constantly by kids, by pets, by our partners. And that's also can be a drain. So here's where we ask you, okay, make some small changes, because you need to take care of your most important technical device, which is your brain. It's not a technical device, but it's a biological mystery and really needs some good taken care of. So this is the second thing that we do. We identify the drain and we make small changes as soon as possible, because we want to get out of the paralysis. So once we do that, we are ready to do the third thing. And the third thing is we need to balance our thinking in written. What am I referring to? You might notice, oh, do I not have to do something with my emotions first? We'll get there, but for the moment, when we're in paralysis, often the thing is that what's more pushing through are some very negative thoughts, and we're actually, we said we're blank, but probably below that blanking out, there is a lot going on. And it's just the tip of the iceberg. Numbing is just the tip of the iceberg. Feeling that you're just sad and numb is just the tip of the iceberg. Because below that, there's a lot going on. And your brain actually doesn't stop. You're just not paying attention. So the invitation here is to use that space that you created and use that energy that you're starting to conserve when you're reducing the drain to sit down and let those thoughts come through. You know, allow yourself to think what you're actually thinking below the surface. Hope that's clear here. And the most important thing here is we need to shift our thoughts from all the things that we don't have, from all the things that we don't know, from all the things that are not clear, onto what we already have, what we know, and what's clear. Why am I saying this? Why have I chosen this for today? Because I've seen that a couple of clients of mine who are really great professionals and who have always had really great self-esteem. The weird thing is that when the crisis happened and so many changes started to occur, they suddenly came in and said, like, you know, if I suddenly feel that I can't trust myself, I suddenly feel like I'm a worse professional than I used to be. I really doubt myself. And often that's because things had been happening in the environment, and that these thoughts, you know, that come up in the flight mode, they become so overwhelming that they ended up in paralysis. So what we want to do is, like, we actually want to start to bring them in and then introduce some shifts here. What types of thoughts? Let's go through a list. I've put here two important words that are self-esteem and self-efficacy. So let me explain them first. First, self-efficacy. Sorry, self-esteem. Self-esteem is, do I value myself as a person? Do I like myself as a person? And do I support myself as a person that is likable? So why both things? If I like myself, I might be thinking, okay, I appreciate the character I have. I know my strengths. I also know what I'm not so good at. I also know what kind of my shadow side is, or the part of myself that I don't like that much. And I accept that, right? I accept myself the way I am. That's one part. I like myself. And the other one is I support myself. I do things that I would do for a person that I like, which means, like, I don't criticize myself the whole time, or I don't lie in the sense of, like, I'm not showing my true self, or I'm not being authentic at work. All the time I'm putting on a mask because I think I can't allow myself to be seen. And that often leads to not being assertive, not sharing your opinion, not standing up for yourself. And so this is the whole piece about self-esteem. So what might be coming up in these days is a lot of self-criticism. I should be more productive. I should have changed my job a year ago. I should have told my boss to do whatever already. I should have fill in the blank. Right? These are the thoughts that are under the surface that push us into paralysis. So we want to bring them into our conscious awareness. And that's why we need to write them down. Because the thing is, what you will notice is, as you write them down, you will not know a better way to think this thought. So this is a process. And the process starts by becoming aware and then to balance them. So you balance them, for example, if you are criticizing yourself and you notice that the biggest thought process that's going on is self-criticism, you start to focus on what you've been doing well. You start to focus on what you are achieving if you're feeling unproductive. And that's then what's actually going to lead to self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is the belief that you have everything you need to achieve the things you want to do. Right? So self-efficacy has a lot to do with past successes. This is what's been shown in research. Self-efficacy is built and gained when we do things well, when we are having our professional advances, when we get degrees, when we get some recognition. And then, very importantly, we need to start generalizing that, because it's not about thinking, oh yeah, and that project like 5 years ago with the help of my colleagues, yes, we achieved something, but that has nothing to do with my professional quality today. And that's not true. It's not true. If you've achieved things in the past, then you probably have things to offer. You have resources, you have strengths, you have knowledge, you have experiences, and that's what we're trying to recover when we're making this written exercise. So let me sum this up. The first step of this balancing thought exercise would be to sit down in your space and allow thoughts to come up. What am I thinking? What am I overthinking? What is below the surface? And then you might be realizing that you just write down, maybe you take 20 minutes to just write down freely what are all the things that are going through your head. And you might realize that some of them are completely out of your control. Right? So for the moment, what's out of your control, let's park that. So say out of my control. And then there might be things that are actually undermining your self-esteem, your self-efficacy, your good view of yourself. And then I would say, here you need to balance. Here you need to open up your view. Right? But when we are in fight, flight, or freeze, we go into a tunnel vision. So we need to open up and ask ourselves, how can I think more realistically about myself in this situation? And we make lists. We make lists of our accomplishments. We make lists of what we're grateful for. We make lists of what we've accomplished today. We make lists of all the small good things that we catch about ourselves. We can make all of these lists, whatever jumps at you, whatever you feel like is the most important for you, go do that. And you start doing that for a week or two to start to find a new baseline that is further away from that probability of going back into paralysis, right? So here we need to really support ourselves. And that's the last step in this phase. This is the last step of really taking care of paralysis. When I work on this with clients, it's a lot about self-care. It's a lot about giving permission to stop. It's a lot about finding the good in you and not good in the future. Good in the past, good in the present moment. All those good things that you already have that nobody can take away. So after having said all this, we had kind of 15 minutes to the hour. I'm really curious to know what's on your mind. So what's on your mind can be many different things, and I would please like to open up, if I can do that. I want to open up the... So I have you now have the capacity to unmute your phone, if you feel like doing so, and share something, to speak up, share a thought that's on your mind, or in chat, share with us some of the recurring, maybe draining thoughts that you have had a lot. Maybe you can find a better way to think about, as you're thinking about this. Let me share an example here. A client of mine the other day told me, okay, I'm just really, really, really worried because I'm not doing enough. I'm such a responsible person normally, but somehow I feel it's never good enough. And the reality is that she was doing an amazing job. She had just received, literally the days before, amazing evaluations. And the thing is that she felt really out of control because of the whole coronavirus situation, that she somehow felt she needed to use her own responsibility more. So what we did in terms of balancing that thinking is that she started making a list of all the things that were in her area of responsibility and that she actually did. And she was amazed to go to find out, like, wow, I'm actually being responsible for many, many different little things and big things at work, at home, for myself. And she started to notice how she relaxed, and I could actually hear that when, when we're talking, like there was this little sigh, like, okay, this is feeling better. So question here, how can we be objective during the thinking phase? That is a very important question. So I want to be very transparent here. I think we can't be objective because we're subjective, right? So it's tough. It's always our subjective experience. Whatever we're thinking, it's our subjective experience. So what we can do is we can put our subjective experience and our subjective thoughts, we can put them in a perspective. So how do we do that? We can do that in writing. So with this exercise, you can come up with different explanations of what's going on. It's probably something that we're going to do in the next webinar. We can come up with different explanations of what's going on. We can talk to other people and we can get their ideas, their subjective opinions about what's going on, always knowing it's not the truth, it's not reality, it's just an opinion, another opinion. And then we can create like a little map. So let's be more specific here. If I am just worried that I'm going to, imagine I do often trainings. So I could be very worried that trainings, in-company trainings, are going to be blocked until the end of the year and that I'm not going to be able to keep developing that part of my portfolio. If I'm a company and I do that, then that could be worrying me. And then we can say, okay, is that objective? Am I being worried too much? Am I thinking like, oh, we don't have the opportunity to keep doing what we're doing? We can't because there's so many there's so many barriers, etc. So what we do is we write that down, we put in perspective, saying even though right now it's true that there might be prohibitions even that don't allow us to do that. What we can do is we can do certain trainings online. We can do maybe certain things to start shifting what we're doing offline to do it online. And then we need to first of all put it in the perspective of, even though it's true that this is not possible right now, what is possible? So again, we're doing the same thing. We shift from what's not available. We shift from what we don't have to what we do have. And it's always in what we do have. There's the opportunity. And sometimes even what we don't have, it can be some inspiration. So we, for example, at CNews, we work a lot with international students. You know that if you know CNews. We work with international students who won't be able to come to Madrid. So that, just taking that in, listening to the thought, listening to the worry, led us to realize, okay, this is really probably not going to be an option. So what are we doing then? What are we going to do then? Right? So you shift and then you say, well, we can do other things, and then you get going. So you get out of the paralysis because suddenly you have some hope. Very good questions here. I really love that. What else is on your mind? Please share something that's on your mind. Beautiful. How can we try to reconcile the ambition and idea of being successful and always running at full speed with our personal feeling and need to slow down and have a more relaxed lifestyle? For me, I am almost feeling guilty for not wanting that ambition. Wow, I love that train of thought. So let's just say that ambition is something that drives us forward. It's a motivation to succeed. It's a motivation to do things, and we call that ambition, right? And we can have an ambition to excel. We can have an ambition to create a company or just do a really great job, to get a promotion, to find out what we really want to do in our lives. And that's an ambition. But you feel very right. Ambition also comes with the sense of I'm too driven, right? I'm kind of anxious or I'm compulsive and I never stop. So what I would like us to put into the equation of that thought, in the perspective of the thought is that, is the ambition to succeed, if we're going for that success within a space of personal well-being, and if we're balancing out the parts of our lives that we're actually dedicating to going for that ambition with other things, then that might be absolutely healthy. And we actually don't need to rush for it. We just need to go step by step And instead of looking at this as a constant sprint of saying, like, well, this is something that will take some years, but I'm doing small steps, and actually then having an ambition, it doesn't feel so overwhelming because I can do it, right? It's sustainable over time. So I think, first of all, also another thing that you're saying is I nearly feel guilty because I don't have ambition. It's right that in certain environments, and I don't know what your environment is, there is kind of you have to be pushy, you have to be competitive, otherwise you're kind of weird. I know that from personal experience, right? Because I studied at a business school, my undergrad, and didn't really feel fully like that was my thing. And then obviously I'm not doing it anymore. So it wasn't really my calling to be a marketing executive. And I realized that when I started to be more part of the world of psychologists, where competitiveness is not, it's not so visible, it felt very different. So I completely get what you're saying. You know, there might be environments where ambition is really, really, really palpable, right? Consultancy might be something like that, or finance, or very competitive markets where everything needs to go with like speed and quick. Even journalism, you know, speed, quick. And if you then feel guilty, like, no, there's million ways of making a change. There's a million ways of having an impact. It doesn't need to be speedy. It doesn't need to be full speed, crazy. You know, many people make amazing contributions, taking their time, going at a pace that's sustainable for them, for the families, for the whole environment. And it's absolutely fine. And they actually notice it when you're with those people. They have a sense of peace. So again, you find, oh, but how do I get there? It starts again with noticing when you're shifting to that over-accelerated lifestyle. And I can clearly say that to myself. I really love what I'm doing, and sometimes I'm just like, yeah, yes to everything. And then I end up running everywhere, and it's horrible. And then I actually don't like what I'm doing, but not because of the work that I'm doing, but because of how I'm doing it. So that's one of the big distinctions that actually we're going to talk about when we talk about work transitions. You know, what type of a change do I need? Do I need to make a change in how I work, or do I need to make a change where I work, or do I need to make a change with whom I work? So this is distinguishing. And in my case, it was clear as a psychologist and coach is work that I love, but I can't rush everywhere, right? I can't do sessions back to back for 6 hours and then have a webinar half an hour later on the other end of Madrid. No. And I used to do these things. So kind of sometimes you learn the hard way. And so what I want to get to is ambition and striving doesn't need to go with the speed. And another thing that I forgot is that we all have an inherent need for growth. Where we grow and how we grow is up to us, but we need it. And it's interesting because people that sometimes think, you know, wow, I have everything I need and everything's fine, but I still don't feel good because they're not growing. And that's really humanistic psychology that started to find that, if you know Maslow's hierarchy of needs, on the top is self-transcendence. So what does that mean? Doing something that's beyond you, growing, sharing, generativity, you know, leaving something for the next generation. That's what we want to do, a part of a human nature, once the lower levels of the pyramid are covered. So it's, again, not really optional. It comes with our human condition. So please don't feel guilty if right now you don't have that ambition, because maybe you're just happy with, hey, I just started to manage something and feel secure. I feel I already have anything. I'm fine with what I have. That will probably be like that for a time, and then you will want to make a small change in a certain direction, or what you're doing is already providing some. So really cool question. Thank you so much for sharing that. I wonder if we have some more. Thank you. So if you have some more questions, and please think about them, put them in the chat. I'm just starting to wrap this up. Ah, yes, here, Bernard has one. With the current unknowns we're dealing with, the COVID, how long? Yeah, there's restrictions, the economic downturn, obviously out of control. How can you try and deal with that? So we will go deeper into this in the next webinar, because this is very much in the part where we are in the flight mode, when we're in anxious mode, right? What if this is going to happen? What if this is going to happen? Part of the steps that I'm going to share next week has a lot to do with separating what can I do and what can I not do? So it's all about responsibility. And responsibility is the theme where we need to say, okay, today I'm feeling really anxious and that emotion is in me. What part of that emotion requires an action, and what part of that emotion do I need to accept? We can apply that same logic to economic downturn. What part of the economic downturn do I need to accept? Which part of the economic downturn can I influence? And I can take some responsibility to help my company, the company I work for, my project, my family. Can I do something to prevent this from going down that much? And then we start to identify some actions and we implement that. So again, we have this discernment phase. We're going to talk about discernment next week, discerning what can I influence, what responsibilities can I take, and which ones are out of control. And then we do acceptance. We practice acceptance for the ones that are really out of control. We let this go. I don't like to say let it go. We just accepted that there's nothing I can possibly do to change this. And on the other hand, I focus on doing the things that I can do. And so, for example, during the lockdown, something that I knew I could do is to connect with colleagues and do videos and connect and talk about things that might be interesting for our clients, and then do those videos and put them onto YouTube and put them onto Instagram and put them onto LinkedIn, which is what we're doing today, and just at least share something, and say, and be there with my clients and for my clients or for just anybody who's there. And that's something that I can do. I can't control if that helps, but I can do it. And then it makes me feel a little bit more in control. And of course, Werner, I don't know what you're thinking about exactly, but again, that's the direction that I would take. And then you start to implement some actions. Kira, I've noticed myself paralyzed over the last few weeks, and it's also impacted my personal relationship because sometimes it's too much to connect with those people. Is there a good way to explain that I'm paralyzed to close partner and friend? Beautiful question. Yes. And you know what, I think this is where we really build friendships or connections, when we are being authentic, when we can say very honestly, this is how I've been feeling. And it's super funny because I literally had to exactly do that yesterday to some friends because I had been super overloaded with messages and I couldn't even process what was going on because it feels like so much, from school and friends and my mom being alone in Germany and all of these different things, and I couldn't even wrap my head around looking at messages. And I missed some messages that were actually important, like by my friends. So what I said is to just be very open, say you know what, it's been really overwhelming in the last days and I couldn't really focus and I couldn't really, make a space. So I've missed out on certain things and I'm really sorry for that. So I think really being vulnerable, being authentic, letting them know what's going on, and maybe also explaining what has been going on. And this, if these are real friends, there's two situations. Maybe they have some capacities that they can give to you in the sense they can listen and they can understand you and they actually have the capability in that moment to listen, or they're also in that same state, right? And that's when we get those reactions that might feel like, what is this? I just wanted you to understand that I'm not feeling well. But we need to take into account, other people are also in that same situation, and it's beauty about this. Sorry, it's not beautiful, but that's one of the things. I think it's easier now to understand because it's not like I'm in this situation here sitting in Madrid and you're sitting somewhere else, we have different realities, but there is an underlying linking factor. So I think communication is clear, explaining that and actually looking for empathy by sharing what's going on for you. That's the thing, and I'm sure that if these are your friends, they will understand, and then they will actually reach out to support you even more. So, my lady, I don't know what I want to do next or the best way to cope with the current situation. I have noticed I have a need to control everything, and there's little I can control right now. How do I define my priorities? I love these questions. They are really good. So how do I define my priorities? So first of all, I think it's super important to think short-term, mid-term, long-term. Short-term is while I'm still in this situation, that's the starting point. We don't know for how long we're going to be in this situation. So I would say like, now that I'm, whatever the situation is, maybe we can put an end date to it. Now that I'm in this situation, my top 3 priorities are A, B, C. And then you go like, yeah, but that's not the problem. I know what my priorities are midterm. Okay, perfect. So you do short term, so you do midterm. And then you define the next stage that you can overview that is within the next couple of months. And then you can do, again, priorities. So you ask yourself, what are the top 3 things that need to happen in these 3 months? And then once you have the top priorities, you could start to define some actions. And if you say, I have a need to control a lot, you can even add to that, I am not going to try to control, and you do other things, because sometimes really knowing how we can sabotage ourselves is the first way of not doing it. So if I know that I have my priorities, but then I'm going to do and try to control something else, if I've already identified that as a possible problem, then the moment I'm doing it, I'm more likely to catch it. Right? So you can say like, I'm not going to try to control, I'm just inventing that, if my cousin is staying home because my cousin happens to not respect the social distancing. So maybe you've been trying to control that, and I'm really just making this up. So you go like, I'm not going to control this because it's a waste of energy. So it was something that I've been doing a lot with my business school students, is to do circles of responsibility, right? What's my responsibility? What can I do? I want to change it. I can change it. That's your responsibility. So I want to change it. I can change it and have the time to change it, right? Out of that is influence. It's like you want to change it, but you can't change it. Someone else needs to change it. So you can only influence. And then out of that is the circle of concern. So if anything is on concern, you can't control it, that should go on your list of things that I'm not going to control. So, and I've stopped here with midterm, then long term, and here we could, I don't know what I'm going to do next. Maybe in your step 1 and step 2, there's things like I want to read this book, or I want to start to subscribe to certain newsletters, I want to research certain companies. Maybe that's short midterm, and then long term, you can actually allow yourself to have priorities that are going to happen within a year or something. And then say, well, as of December 2020, what I'm going to start prioritizing is to whatever, you go for the promotion, you go for the next job, but you're putting a date that is later on so that in your head it doesn't get mixed up. And again, do it in writing, because then you can go back to it. And the important thing is that this exercise is actually not the exercise in itself. The exercise then is to make it stay present with you. So having it visible, having it as a background screenshot on your computer so that you can look at it and you go back every day and you go, what is the priority right now? A, B, C. The priorities as of September will be different. And what's very important if you've been in paralysis is that you schedule in rest. I can't repeat that more often. You need to schedule in rest, because sometimes we come from something that was really draining and we want to run to the next. And just yesterday, having a conversation with a new client, he said, like, I've been in a situation in the past years where I've been laid off, and I came out of this full of energy and full of rage and full of anger because it had been handled so poorly. And I wanted to go like run marathons and do all these things, and I was so frustrated. And then my wife, thank God, was there to say, hey, you need to calm down. You're over the top. You're hyperactive. Remember that? Hyperactivity? Stop. Because you can't run from one thing to the next. You need to allow yourself to calm down, because that's when you can do your best thinking. Right? So remember that sometimes calming down, it feels like a threat, but it's not, because that's where your creative thinking will kick in. Because we can't think creatively when we're overwhelmed. So maybe this is, in the short term, midterm, long term, that's part of the thing that we want to be doing. We want to identify that creativity phase. Kira, thank you so much. It was great having you. I'm very aware that we're hitting the hour. Yes, we're 5 minutes over. So last chance to send me a question. And before that, so very important, if you need some support, when do people need support in this? If you don't know how to take care of yourself, right? You've got it. Yes, if I got it, but I don't know how to stop the drain. If you feel guilty when you try to protect yourself, we had guilt coming up. So if you feel guilty when you try to protect yourself and you really, you can't, and maybe that someone is actively pushing you to not take care of yourself, or you're not really sure if you need to stop or now is the moment to act, if you can't decide that for yourself, then it's really helpful to talk to someone. If you're doubting yourself, if you're doubting your work, your life, whatever, if you're not able to identify anything positive, that's really a moment to step back and take some external help. And that's also from Seniors, where we're obviously working online these days. And we wanted to offer that right now during the lockdown, which is probably until the end of May. We're offering all the coaching that normally is 100 euros a session. We're offering it at 85. That's our online price. It's limited time, limited availability. I do just 20 hours, not all of them are available right now. But please, if you think that could be your option, get in touch. You can send me an email. You can contact us at seniors.es or seniors-online.com, where you can just reserve your session. Please do so. Save the date. We're doing this next week. We're just doing it an hour early as it's not a holiday. And then we're going to talk about emotions, right? Emotions. What am I going to do with my emotions? How do I separate what I need to act on, what I don't need to act on? So that's the next one. And again, take your chance to change your work, whatever change you need. We're going to talk about it. Thanks so much, everybody. If you missed part of the session, this will be in our YouTube channel, so make sure you check that out.